right, so I should be back here. Hopefully we'll pop up here on this unfroze screen that we see there. Apologize on that. We're going to continue on. I ended up on the last time with ending on the, before it locked up, we were just about ready. We were starting up in the 15th verse there. Just had finished up as we ended up on the 14th. I'm not sure exactly where it froze up on me. Hopefully this should pop up very shortly here. Let me refresh that. So, okay. But I apologize. Hopefully, I'm just wanting to see if I got my Rumble back up. And we're getting off this frozen screen. Let me go and see if I've got another one that's popped up. There we go. All right. So I am back. Hopefully there we can watch. All right. Good. Apologize for all of these fun things. I just want to make sure I got everything up again. So technology is great. Every once in a while it does glitch on us though, right? So all right, so we're going to start again. We're going to jump right back into this on the 27th chapter, Numbers, 15th verse. Then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, May the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the congregation who will go out and come in before them, and who will lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be like sheep which have no shepherd. So Moses, as humble as he is, he knows he's not going to see the promised land. He wants to make sure that everybody, that the people are still taken care of. He loves his chosen people. So the Lord said to Moses, Take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, and have him stand before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and commission him in their sight. And you shall put some of your authority on him, in order that all the congregation of the sons of Israel may obey him. So Joshua is not Moses 2.0, but he is the next one to follow Moses. He doesn't have the same power of Moses. He's not going to have the same relationship that Moses had with God himself. Remember, God, he would go right in, and God showed him his presence often. So much so that he had to veil his face because they couldn't, it would glow. So we're looking on this. So Joshua is now being the one, and this is, again, when we hit Deuteronomy, we're going to be running into a lot of this over, because this is how God is preparing his people, and he doesn't want us to be unprepared. Moreover, he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire for him by the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. At his command they shall go out, and at his command they shall come in, both he and the sons of Israel with him, even all the congregation. And Moses did just as the Lord had commanded him. And he took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation. Then he laid his hands on him and commissioned him just as the Lord had spoken through Moses. Now, Aaron, remember, if you've read this here, you're going to remember that Aaron had the similar thing done to him with Eleazar, his son, where Aaron was stripped of all of his garments, and then and then Eleazar, Aaron was stripped of all his garments, and Eleazar was then dressed in those and was then commissioned before the Lord took him. So now we're going to start with the 28th verse, chapter, the first verse. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command the sons of Israel, and say to them, You shall be careful to present my offering, my food for my offerings, by fire of a soothing aroma to me, at their appointed time. And you shall say to them, This is the offering by fire, which you shall offer to the Lord, 2 male lambs, 1 year old without defect, as a continual burnt offering every day. You shall offer the one lamb in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. Also 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil. It is a continual burnt offering which was ordained in Mount Sinai as a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to the Lord. Then the libation with it shall be 1/4 of a hin for each lamb. In the holy place you shall pour out a libation of strong drink to the Lord, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. As the grain offering of the morning and its libation you shall offer it, an offering by fire, a soothing aroma to the Lord. Then on the Sabbath day 2 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with oil as a grain offering, and its libation. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, in addition to the continual burnt offering and its libation. Then at the beginning of each of your months you shall present a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 bulls and 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with oil for each bull, and 2/10 of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with oil for the 1 ram, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with oil for a grain offering. For each lamb for a burnt offering of a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to the Lord, and their libation shall be half a hin of wine for a bull, and 1/3 of a hin for the ram, and 1/4 of a hin for a lamb. This is the burnt offering of each month throughout the months of the year. And 1 male goat for a sin offering to the Lord, it shall be offered with its libation, in addition to the continual burnt offering. Now, see, he's repeating over things that have been covered once before, but see, God is continually wanting to remind the people, these are the children. We don't know how well they were raised or trained up. We're meant to train up our children to continue on and carry on these traditions, but we don't know exactly how well they were raised up to do this. So here is God's reiteration of this for his people. All right. Then on the 14th day of the first month shall be the Lord's Passover, and on the 15th day of this month shall be a feast. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. And you shall present an offering by fire, a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 bulls and 1 ram, and 7 male lambs 1 year old, having them without defect. And for their grain offering you shall offer fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for a bull, and 2/10 for the ram. 1/10 of an ephah you shall offer for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, to make atonement for you. You shall present these besides the burnt offering of the morning, which is for a continual burnt offering. After this manner you shall present daily for 7 days the food of the offering by fire, of a soothing aroma to the Lord. It shall be presented with its libation, in addition to the continual burnt offering. And on the 7th day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. Also on the day of the first fruits, when you present a new grain offering to the Lord in your feast of the weeks, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work, and you shall offer a burnt offering for a soothing aroma to the Lord, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for the 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, 1 male goat, to make atonement for you. Besides the continual burnt offering and its grain offering, you shall present them with their libations. They shall be without defect. So here we have this continued renewal here. So now we're going to go on and we're going to continue on as it's speaking of the offerings and things on the 29th chapter. Now on the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall also have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. It will be to you a day for blowing trumpets. And you shall offer a burnt offering as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 1 bull, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs 1 year old without defect. Also their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs. And offer 1 male goat for a sin offering, to make atonement for you. Besides the burnt offering of the new moon and its grain offering, and the continual burnt offering and its grain offering, and their libations according to their ordinance, for a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to the Lord. Then on the 10th day of this 7th month you shall have a holy convocation, and you shall humble yourselves. you shall not do any work, and you shall present a burnt offering to the Lord as a soothing aroma. 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old, having them without defect, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 of an ephah for the ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, 1 male goat for a sin offering besides the sin offering of atonement, and the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering and their libations. Then on the 15th day of the 7th month you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work, and you shall observe a feast to the Lord for 7 days. And you shall present a burnt offering, an offering by fire as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 13 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old, which are without defect, and their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 rams, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its libation. Then on the 2nd day 12 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering, and their libations for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and their libations. Then on the 3rd day 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering, and their libations, for the bulls, for the rams, for the lambs, by their number, according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, and its grain offering, and its libation. Then on the 4th day 10 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old without defect, their grain offering, and their libations, for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number, according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its libation. Then on the 5th day 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering and their libations for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual offering, burnt offering, and its grain offering, and its libation. Then on the 6th day 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering, and their libations, for the bulls, for the rams, for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its libations. Then on the 7th day 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 male lambs 1 year old without defect, and their grain offering, and their libations, for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs, by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides a continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its libation. On the 8th day you shall have a solemn assembly. You shall do no laborious work. You love how these patterns are. Is you get together on these solemn celebrations, making sure you aren't working. They're all right. But you shall present a burnt offering by an offering by fire as a soothing aroma to the Lord, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 male lambs 1 year old without defect, their grain offering and their libations for the bull, for the ram, and for the lambs by their number according to the ordinance, and 1 male goat for a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering and its grain offering and its libation. You shall present these to the Lord at your appointed times, besides your votive offerings and your freewill offerings, for your burnt offerings and for your grain offerings, and for your libations and for your peace offerings. And Moses spoke to the sons of Israel in accordance with all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Now we go through that, and there's a lot that's there. It's a repetition, but you notice, and this was noticed on there in the class, we talked about this, and the question was asked, why did it get smaller and smaller? Well, really, it doesn't say in here why each day they lessen them. But one of the common thing I've read on there of talking about that is I was like, well, I better look that up, because it does make sense that as the days progress, as you go through the season, that you through this time, that as each day passes, you lower the amount of what is being sacrificed, because you're also coming closer to closing it all. And you, of course, need to make sure that everything is handled properly, because you don't do this or handle these offerings in an unholy or a way that would dishonor God. It doesn't say exactly why they lower them in here. It doesn't give us that insight. So all we can do is we can look and we can make, and even I would say that if you were to read Masoretic texts or others, Hebrew scholars, They would probably say that, well, yes, it's because it's closing, but the reality is this, that is what we are assuming because that is how we are, but we are not of God's mind. So we want to be thoughtful of that. But there are things that you're going to continue to see these processes as they move forward through that. This repetition of this, as we notice throughout all, there's often repetition, and it's making it known that how important this is. And you have to realize, at this time, it wasn't like we had a library with books, or we had all of us had our own copies of the Bible that we could just lift up and read. So this needed to be spoken over and over again to ingrain it into their head. And the hope is that they would continue and they'd teach it to their children over and over again, because that is what it is we ingrain it by teaching it and writing it upon our heads, our hearts, our minds. And you think about the reason, as we find that they would do that literally in Jews, they would sometimes take this very literal, and you'll find some Orthodox that still do, where they'll write and they'll have a box here, and then also the tassels. Those are also reminders on their scouts, the phylacteries as they're called. So now we're going to go through the final chapter we're going to cover today, the 30th chapter. And it goes, Then Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the sons of Israel, saying, This is the word which the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to bind himself with a binding obligation, he shall not, or that they'd make before God always, but also talking about how it is to make sure that when you make a vow or an oath, that it needs to be kept. That is your character. All right. Also, if a woman, violate his word, he shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Also, if a woman makes a vow to the Lord and binds herself by an obligation in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and her obligation by which she has bound herself, and her father says nothing to her, then all her vows shall stand, and every obligation by which she has bound herself shall stand. So it's, again, now here for the woman in the household, because they are under the care of their father or their husband, as we'll find here, but under the care of their father, they need to actually know their father needs to approve of any vow. But if her father should forbid her on the day he hears of it, none of her vows or her obligations by which she has bound herself shall stand, and the Lord will forgive her because her father had forbidden it. However, if she should marry while under her vows, or the rash statement of her lips by which she has bound herself, and her husband hears of it and says nothing to her on the day he hears it, then her vows shall stand, and her obligations by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if on the day her husband hears it, he forbids her, then he shall annul her vow which she is under, and the rash statement of her lips by which she has bound herself, and the Lord will forgive her. But the vow of a widow or of a divorced woman, everything by which she has bound herself, shall stand against her, because she no longer, a widow or a divorced woman, no longer stands under the authority of their father or their husband. However, if she vowed in her husband's house or bound herself by an obligation with an oath, and her husband heard it but said nothing to her and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every obligation by which she bound herself shall stand. But if her husband indeed annuls them on the day he hears them, then whatever proceeds out of her lips concerning her vows or concerning the obligation of herself shall not stand. Her husband has annulled them, and the Lord will forgive her. Every vow and every binding oath to humble herself, her husband may confirm it, or her husband may annul it. If her husband indeed says nothing to her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows or all her obligations which are on her. He has confirmed them because he said nothing to her on the day he heard them. But if he indeed annuls them after he has heard them, then he shall bear her guilt. These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses, as between a man and his wife, and as between a father and his daughter, while she is in her youth in her father's house. So when we think of vows, we have to remember that vows are vital And we should even, in our lives, we should never take making vows lightly. And we also need to take what God desires for us to do and take it very seriously. So often we may not do that, and not always is it purposeful or malicious. But see, what we see is God is reiterating, He wants us to remember what it is that He desires of us. And He wants us to continue to turn to Him and seek out His guidance in everything, and not to make rash vows, rash obligations. We shouldn't take oaths lightly. We should never take an oath on the word and say, "So help me God," unless we plan on definitely keeping it for our entire life, or until one point we are released of it. But vows are something you should never take lightly or take seriously. I know there's only been one real vow that I've been one major vow before God that I've asked to be released of, and it was with an order I'd become a part of, and I felt that because of things that had happened, I didn't feel I could in good faith continue on with that and keep that vow, so I was released from that vow. But the same is true for each of us as we make these vows and promises. Never make them lightly, and keep God's word inviolate in your heart. I hope you enjoy this, and I'm sorry about the glitch on the first part of this that we had the little thing that had happened. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you'll recommend and you'll share it or bring it or come back another time and tell others to come and listen. I hope you, and I pray that God fills you well in the Word of God and draws you ever nearer to Him. And always remember that Jesus loves you, and so do I. God bless. Have a great day.